Hey fellow golfers, this is Robbie from Best Ball. One of the most popular names in the golf accessory market today is Western Birch. Stop reaching in your pocket for boring plastic or plain white golf tees and elevate your game with premium wooden golf tees from Western Birch. You can customize both the hardwood and bamboo tees with one of their signature stripe patterns in a wide variety of colors. These tees are stylish enough to stand apart from the crowd, traditional enough to align with golf's heritage, and durable enough to make you forget about using anything else. Enter the code BESTBALL in the promo field in your shipping cart to add a free gift to your order. So visit westernbirch.com and get your own premium wood golf tees in the style that suits your game.
Hey, Mark, you would know, is this shot as hard as they make it seem, or is it overplayed? And I said, it's harder than it seems. You know, it's truly remarkable.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Caddie Tales Podcast. I'm Mark the Caddie, joined as always by my sidekick, colleague, friend, fellow looper, Nick. And we're excited to talk to you about how the game of golf intersects so beautifully with the game of life. We are brought to you today by Holderness and Bourne. Check them out at hbgolf.com. Type in the promo code BESTBALL to get yourself some free shipping. And as the holidays draw near, perhaps pick up something for that golf lover in your life or even a little gift for yourself. So check them out at hbgolf.com. Welcome, Nick, as we enter into week 3 of the off season here. So I know you're working hard and about to start a second job, but the game of golf still goes on and in many parts of the country, and certainly the opportunity to talk about it never ends. So let's get to that today. How you doing today?
Doing good, man. Yeah, it's a little different, kind of opening up this off season, kind of doing different things, and sure makes me miss caddying a lot, to be completely honest. But
yeah, that's one of the things that I think the Caddy Master has on guys when they're whining about things when the season gets hard, you know, maybe it's hot and they're doing too many double loops or whatever. I think he always knows that once guys get to a factory or whatever, that caddying's going to start looking awfully attractive again. And the reality is he's 100% correct, I think. So we certainly in the winter grow in our appreciation for the life that we have been given out there. I miss the opportunity to have routine. And so I am missing that whole rhythm of life. But I also am thankful for the chance for the body to heal. But also, as we get into the off season, I find myself just thinking back over the course of the year to various holes that were special, various shots, various players, all that. And that got me thinking about just what are some of the iconic holes where we work. And I'm going to back up here and say, you know, some listeners have noticed and they'll ask, you know, we rarely mention the name of where we work, which obviously anyone who knows golf knows is Whistling Straits and the Irish course adjoining to it. And that's because we want to be respectful. You know, we are not speaking for them, for one. Two, we, really aren't, trying to profit off their name, so to speak. And so they afford us this wonderful place to work, and we love talking about it. But we also just recognize that we're just but little pieces in that whole cog. But today we kind of have to acknowledge that that's where we work, because we want to talk about some of the holes that have existed in previous tournaments at the course. And for those who aren't familiar, every now and then I get a golfer who's like, have you ever had any big tournaments here? And I'm like, always baffled. Like, how did you end up here? You know, like, how did it end up that you made a reservation to this golf course and you did not know its history? But the vast majority of golfers will ask about certain players and certain shots and certain holes. And we've talked about it a lot on here. The Jordan Spieth shot on 17. We'll get to that one later. But there are ones that are iconic, I think, and maybe you'll be able to add some to the list that I came up with, Nick. But there's some that, we as caddies talk about a lot. And our players ask us about a lot. And so I wanted to talk about those today. And I encourage people who aren't as familiar with them to just go to YouTube. You're going to be able to find all of these out there on YouTube and just get blown away. And if you ever wonder why, we joke about players shouldn't play the tips or whatever, these golfers are playing a different game than we are sometimes, and just have skill that's unbelievable. And they show it off in some miraculous shots. So we've been able to host 3 PGA championships and then 1 Ryder Cup, and amazing memories from all of them. But the first one that I want to start with is one that I remember in the Caddy Shack the year of the Ryder Cup, before the Ryder Cup happened. There was a few shots that we wondered if a particular player was going to pull off, namely Bryson DeChambeau. And we talked about it and said, hey, I wonder if he's going to be able to do this. And he was able to do this. And the first one being, namely, he drove the green on the par 4 first hole. And do you remember that, Nick? Were you watching?
Yeah, I remember it very distinctly. Yeah, I believe he was playing Sergio Garcia, if I remember right. And yeah, it's like you said, so they don't play the tips, right? They don't play the tips on hole 1. So obviously not a drivable par 4. If they'd played the tips, I mean, it's like 500 yards. But from the green tees where they played it, I believe it's like 330, 340, making it a drivable par 4. And the shot he hit was just incredible. I mean, just landed on the green, soft and incredible. And then he drained what was not a short putt for the eagle. Yeah, so that got the crowd awfully fired up. What I think about related to that shot is, you mentioned where they played from in that tournament, and they played from the box where we put the white tee box and the green tee box, and then sometimes they had the blues there. Not this year. Last year I seem to remember them moving the blue tees up to that box a lot. But on our course, if you ever come, look for these little plaques that are on tee boxes. And those plaques will tell you that a pro tournament was played there. And they had to play this hole up more forward because you had grandstands around the hole. You couldn't be all the way back and have grandstands. If you actually look where the tips are on the first hole this year, they're like by the practice green, by the starters table. And it's a ridiculous shot. I hope they're there to kind of scare people. I don't know if they are or not, I think so. But anyways, I mean, so you have to hit your tee shot in front of like everybody that's on the practice screen as well. So I think that's like a big deterrent to try to get people to not.
There was one guy who hit a tee
Yeah.
shot from there, and I don't know if they were playing the tips the whole round or if they were just doing it on the first tee to be funny. But one of our caddy buddies was watching this group tee off because it's not far away from where the caddies assemble at the bag drop to meet with their players and to get ready for their loop. And a guy just absolutely hammered, sliced it, a million yards right or whatever. And the caddy yells, "To the moon," or something to that regard. And I mean, from what I hear, it was 100 times funnier if you were standing there. And I'm thinking, wow, like, I can only imagine how that player reacted. Hopefully they had a good sense of humor about it. But
it's got to be like one of the most intimidating tee shots without everyone already watching you, and then you throw in like the caddies and everyone on the practice screen. It's like, oh man, you got to be nervous.
Yeah. So the good news is that for most players, they're going to be playing where Bryson DeChambeau played from and where all the Ryder Cup people played from. And what I think is funny on that hole is there's a progression that we've talked about through a loop before. And that is that on the first hole, the amount of thought that goes into a shot or the amount of questions that are asked before a shot can be somewhat absurd. Like guys taking a club out of their bag and putting it back in like 3 times, trying to decide, asking this, that, whatever. And then by hole 18, they're just grabbing whatever and going. But a lot of people will be like, do I need driver here? And I get the question. Yeah. There's some stuff like some bunkers or whatever, but every single, and I watched for this on purpose, every single player at the Ryder Cup hit driver from the same spot.
That's often my answer. Yeah, that's often my answer in response to the question, should I hit driver here? And I was like, well, every single person in the Ryder Cup hit driver on this hole, so why not?
Yeah, I know. You know? And it's like sometimes people overthink things so much. And now Lou Stagner would be happy with that approach, because for those who follow Lou on Twitter, you know, his belief, and he believes the data backs this up, is you should try to get as close to the hole. And we always hear a lot, well, I want to have a full swing. I want to have a full, get me to whatever gets 100 out. And I always cringe when I hear that, because it assumes that player, the club that they're going to grab to get to 100 out, they're going to hit it exactly the distance that they think it's going to go. And we know that doesn't always happen. So, you know, it could end up that they're 130 out after that, or they're 40 out because they sculled it and it just, whatever. So every single player at the Ryder Cup took driver, trying to get as close as they could. And I really liked that approach, because, it's a hole that is scoreable if you do that. Now, we know that a lot of our players are amped up and nervous and whatever, and so we see a lot of balls kind of slice right as they begin the round. But Bryson he drove the green, and he made I think it was like a 40-foot putt, and if I remember correctly, and got the crowd fired up. So, check that out on YouTube if you guys aren't familiar with that shot. And the next time you come to Whistling Straits, you can say, hey, I'm pretty much teeing off from right around where Bryson did. Let's kind of compare myself. And then if you find yourself ever being that player who uses the phrase, well, I want to see the whole course, or I want to play what the pros play, you're going to have a perfect measuring stick right off of the opening tee box. So, all right, that's hole one. We're not going to go through every hole, obviously, though I'm sure there's memorable shots from every hole. But for the time we have allotted, we are just kind of picking a few of the ones that we get asked about the most, or that are most memorable. And we go to the same tournament and the same player for the next one that I want to talk about, and that is Bryson DeChambeau's tee shot on hole 5. And what I'll say is this one is not asked about by players as much. Some people will say, oh, you're going to take the Bryson line or whatever, but it's not asked about like Jordan Spieth's shot or Dustin Johnson's that we'll get to in a bit. But to me, it's the one that blows my mind the most. To me, it's dare I say, the most impressive out of all of them. And that is on the...
Yeah, that was I know where you're going. Yeah, go ahead.
On hole 5. So for those who don't know, it's a par 5. It's a big dog leg, okay, with a big pond to the right of the tee box. And from the tees that they played at the Ryder Cup, it's a 603-yard hole. 603 yards. On one of the days of the Ryder Cup, Bryson DeChambeau's tee shot landed him 70 yards from the flag. He knocked 530 yards off of that hole by carrying the water, carrying some hills over to the right, carrying some bunkers, which I believe fans were situated on or near.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then hitting it into the fairway in front of this bush, which we often use as a target for our players. And we're hoping that they're there in 3. And good players, sometimes they're there. A lot of, a good player can get there in 2 to where it is. But it is. I had been working there. That was my 3rd season by that point. So I wasn't as experienced or knowledgeable even as now. But I worked there, and I did not envision that shot being possible.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, just to carry it over everything and then have like a little wedge in and he hit it to a foot and made the eagle putt, obviously. And it was just incredible. Yeah.
Right. And so now one of the banes of our existence is when we have a big hitter, and this is when they're playing from maybe 500 yards instead of 600 yards.
Yeah.
They want to take that same line. And the challenge is it's still for even from up at like the white tees, it's still like a 255 carry or so. Right around there.
Yeah, probably from the whites. Yeah. Greens probably like 270. Yeah.
Yeah. So you still got to carry it more than most people can carry it.
Yeah. And it's definitely like, it could be like downwind, and I think it was pretty downwind the day Bryson played it, but yeah, there's water on the other side, so it's definitely like a risk reward shot.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to get to is people ask about doing it, and the challenge is one, you got to be able to carry it that far, which most people cannot, and or they swing too hard and they don't. It's rarely successful, and so then there's this whole huge set of bunkers where it's very hard to find the ball in there because your depth perception inside of it is pretty tough. It's just a massive area. And so most times players come up short. But my experience this year was I had a couple who could hammer the ball, but they didn't get it right enough. And so on the line they were on, they hit it too far. So it carried all the stuff, but then it's a narrow narrow fairway, and it goes into the pond on the other side. And so you're still kind of like disappointed, even though they hit this massive shot. On the bright side, they're lying 3, still, with a shot at the green. But
in a par 5,
so I am always, I never really encourage it because I think even with the really big hitters, you've got to hit a line right too, and there's just too many variables there to make it successful. So and so sometimes you're just thankful when it's into the wind, because that really takes it out of play.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, like if you don't hit the shot perfectly, I mean, you're probably going to be in a bunker, like with a big lip right in front of you, and you're going to be lucky to make par at that point. And it's a hole where birdie is definitely possible,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so, this hole too, we've talked about this before, is either hole 4 or 5 is where players start to realize, okay, this course is a different animal, and they start to maybe struggle a little bit on one of them. And hole 5, depending on how the wind is blowing, whatever, it can be one of the tougher holes on the course. It's got some danger on it. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Lots of danger.
So sometimes this bush that I referenced that Bryson hit it in front, sometimes people are getting there in 6, 7, whatever. And you say, and then you're like, yeah, this is where Bryson hit his tee shot. And the look on their face, like, unbelievable. Like, they're just playing. I think on that hole, I hear the phrase, they're playing a different game more than any other hole. They're playing a different game than we are. Oh, they're playing a different game. So, yes, that one, it to me was the most wow shot. So, and both of those, I remember that summer sitting around in the caddy shack and guys being like, I wonder if Bryson's going to drive the green on hole 1. I wonder if Bryson's going to carry the water in the hills on hole 5. And both of them, he did. And just a quick little aside about Bryson. I know he's a polarizing figure in the game of golf, and a few years have passed. And so some things have changed as far as his persona and popularity. And I know that at that point he was, kind of the feud was him and Brooks Koepka. All right. And Brooks, I think amongst golfers was more popular, or amongst fans, like people. I think Brooks Koepka was viewed more favorably. Generally, I think a lot of people didn't like or don't like Bryson. What I'll say is this, because I don't get all worked up about, and people can like and not like who they want. I will say this, being a observer up close at the Ryder Cup for a few practice rounds and the competition, Bryson DeChambeau came across infinitely more likable than Brooks Koepka. That's what I'll say about that. Would you agree?
Yeah, he's got more of like an outgoing personality, and he seems relatively friendly, and he's definitely turned a page as far as
but I mean, like Brooks just kind of struts and ignored that fans are even there, and the whole thing about the Ryder Cup is that it's supposed to be different interaction with the fans. That's part of the appeal of it. And Bryson knew where he was at and played into it, and Brooks did not. And I left there going, why does everybody hate Bryson and everybody love Brooks? And that's just my 2 cents. I really don't delve deeply into all the other reasons that might have existed. I just thought, if you didn't know anything about it and all you did was show up at that tournament and that was your first ever experience with golf, you would have liked Bryson more than you would have liked Brooks. Yeah. All right. Another hole that is one where I put this one on there. Again, it's not as well known, but I put this on there because I have a caddy friend who for years, until I made fun of him for doing it, and he won't do it anymore, would say as soon as we got up to the tee box on hole 11, Jason Day went driver gap wedge here. So for those of you unfamiliar with our course, hole 11 is called Sandbox. It's got how many bunkers on it? I've heard 100,
100. Yeah. Somewhere around there. It's got more bunkers on it than all of Black Wolf Run, apparently.
Yeah. So, it is, a long par 5. And the reason why I laugh at that one is I've said to players on a few occasions, when you're caddying for a short hitter or an old woman or, just somebody who's kind of, driver 3-wood, I'm like, this is where I question every life choice that made me into a caddy, because the hole gets away from people. It's a par 5. It's not easy. People are starting to get tired. Their, scores are starting to add up. Sometimes it can just, not be the most fun hole. And then you look and you see that usually he was playing further back than the vast majority of our players. And you're like, you look and people will often be like, that's the hole down there. That's the hole down there. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
And he hits driver, obviously must have been downwind or whatever. And he caught this, not a ton of wind. Yeah. And he caught
warm. It was just warm.
Yeah. And he caught the slope just perfectly, I guess, because how far did he end up out from there on the set for the second shot?
I want to say like 130, 140, somewhere around there. So
gap wedge. Which I know a gap wedge for somebody like him is different than a gap wedge for most players. So he could hit it further. But, for most players, especially into the wind, we're hitting driver, then like a 3-wood or a 5-wood or a hybrid or something, then still having like 100 yards out to the green if they hit 2 good shots. And so to picture somebody going driver gap wedge, occasionally I've had when a guy who can hit the ball 300 yards or so is playing the white tees because his buddies are playing there or because it's a corporate event. I've occasionally had someone downwind crank it relatively close, but still nowhere, like nothing like what Jason Day did.
Yep. Yeah, that was incredible. And I think what he did was he forced them to play it as a par 4 in the Ryder Cup because they didn't want everyone making eagle on that hole. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is a little, I think also some of the, again, logistics of building or, chateaus or whatever on the hole might have played into it, but I think they weren't unhappy to move the players up to the red forward tees on that hole and play it as a par 4. And because it's still a intimidating hole from that spot, like it's not like we ever have a lady or a senior up at the red tee get up and be like, man, this hole should really be a par 4.
No, yeah, never. Yeah.
So, it's because. So that's one where you're, like I mentioned at the beginning, where you're like, these guys are just playing a different game. Their distance is consistently, and being able to hit a good line with that distance is something that the vast majority of us just can't do. And so, driver gap wedge for Jason Day on hole 11. So check that one out on YouTube if you are interested. Now we go to the one that is the most asked about hole, which replaces the former most asked about hole on the course. And that is the 17th hole with Jordan Spieth. Would you agree that became your most asked about hole, Nick?
Yeah, for sure. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one that everybody seems to remember from the Ryder Cup. That was the shot that gets asked about most now.
Yeah, so this is one you're definitely going to want to YouTube and see him caught on like the tracks to the left side of the green and just hit the ball what seemed like 500 feet in the air, but only traveling like a few feet in actual distance, just a remarkable shot. The reason why I actually thought about talking about this on the pod this week was because somebody on Twitter saw a Ryder Cup posting of that shot, like the Ryder Cup Twitter feed looked back on that shot, and they said, "Hey, Mark, you would know, is this shot as hard as they make it seem, or is it overplayed?" And I said, "It's harder than it seems. It's truly remarkable."
Yeah, he made it look too easy.
Yeah, like it people will always be like, "Oh," and I had this kid this year in a group, like a young kid. I want to say he was like 12 or something, playing with his dad. If he asked me, I'm usually really patient with the kids and the players and all that, but if he asked me one more time, or said he was going to do the Jordan Spieth shot on 17, I was going to like throw the kid in the water, and he was just so excited about it. I think that if the hole was earlier in the round, we'd have everybody trying it. By the time we get to it, they're so tired and just want to be done.
Yeah. They just look at it and they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I really think we could try it 100 times with people and we'd get nothing that resembles that.
I don't even know how the ball stuck there, to be completely honest. Like I look at it all the time and I'm just like, how did it stay there?
It's
just incredible.
Nick's not talking about how did it stay there after the shot was completed. It was from the tee shot. How did it stay where it was to set up the next shot? Because it's a big slope and it just should roll down the hill all the way. And his momentum, maybe he overplayed how far he needed to run toward the lake. I don't know, but it still looks kind of cool. And, it has caused a lot of good memories on there. And so I would say, it's become a hole that people really look forward to. And I like it because there's generally, there's a lot of blow ups on it because people are so intimidated by it that they hit it either way right or they hook, but because they were trying to avoid the water. But like there are a good number of birdie and par opportunities on that hole. If people, some people do hit a nice little tee shot. I remember a lady this year who got a birdie and, it hadn't finished like 5 holes the whole round before that. So it can have, and what I love about it is that's an iconic hole. That's a special hole. So it's toward the end of the round. It's an opportunity for people to take back a really nice memory. So I really appreciate that. And I'm thankful for that for them. So, and it signals for us that we're near the end of the round. So we're excited about it too. But it's to me, it's become one of the more iconic ones. Actually, we got to back up. I skipped a hole. And this is one too, where I think the players actually can, feel a little bit good about themselves. And that is what we call the John Daly hole. Hole 7. How did I skip that? My favorite hole to take pictures on the course.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, one of the 2 favorite holes. So for those who aren't familiar with that shot, at a previous PGA championship, John Daly on the par 3 7th hole, which take a look at it if you don't know what it is. It's just beautiful, right along the water though. And he hit a number of tee shots into the water, got frustrated and tossed his club into the water, and a kid backed up his boat and, off the back of it grabbed the club. So that's just a wonderful little video to watch. But what we'll say, especially because, by hole 6, a lot of players have experienced some tough scores. 4 and 5 are super hard holes. Depending on where the pin is on hole 6, that can kind of become a blow up hole for people. And so it's always nice to be able to say, hey, we're going to build our self-esteem on this par 3 coming up, the John Daly hole, chance to get your mind right. Hey, and if you beat a 10, you beat John Daly. So, yeah, you can feel good about yourself.
My biggest memory from that is I was working with the TV station that did the tournament that year. And I remember, like, I was wearing headphones, and I could hear the producer in my ear, and I hear him say, "Cut over to hole 7 right now. John Daly just threw his club in the water," and he was like all excited about it and stuff. So yeah, pretty memorable clip.
Yeah. I mean, they occasionally get frustrated too, and John's obviously a different kind of character, but it's one that shows you that even I want to say to players sometimes, like, what do you expect out of your round? Like, even guys like John Daly end up, shooting 10s on par 3s every now and then. Didn't Nelly Korda have a huge blow up at one of the major tournaments this year? Where she had that happen too. It happens. So it's a chance to say, okay, even they have a bad hole or holes, and I can feel like they're also human. They can pull off shots like Bryson DeChambeau did, but they can also blow up like John Daly did. Golf provides both opportunities, and throughout the course of the round, a lot of our players are going to have both kinds. So yeah, that one, I can't believe I forgot it. And because I love that hole for one, and I love that memory, and I love that I've had players get hole-in-ones on that hole, because it's a beast, and it's awfully fun to be able to see that happen. So, all right, one more to go. And this used to be the most asked about question on the course, and it certainly is still asked about a lot. And that is the 18th hole, where Dustin Johnson grounded his club in what, is called a waste bunker by most of us. But at that PGA Championship, there was no such thing as a waste bunker. They were supposed to play everything as a bunker and not ground their clubs. And he did, and that forced him to lose the tournament. And so, pretty iconic. So, do you get asked quite a bit, Nick, hey, where's DJ's waste bunker?
Yeah, definitely not quite as frequently as it used to be, but I would say probably like 1 out of every 7 rounds somebody will ask about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I've heard various tales over the years from other caddies. Oh, it doesn't exist anymore. Or, no, like it does. I think it's probably changed a little bit, and it's hard to recreate the exact how it looked with thousands of fans standing around and a bunch of garbage on the ground. So it doesn't look exactly the same, but I have plenty of players hit over there, and at least you get to say you're over by DJ's waste bunker. But yeah, every day you're like, this is a huge part of golf history. It really is that was a big part of golf history. Yeah,
very memorable shot for sure.
Also, we are asked every round by people, is this a waste bunker? Now, maybe this is the dumbest question I'm ever going to ask. Is there technically such a thing as a waste bunker?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's the way they played it at Kiowa.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
I think it's more of like a local rule.
Yeah, like I'm just like, yeah, we local rules here. We play everything non-green side as a waste bunker. If we played everything as a bunker, for crying out loud, and had to rake all of them too, like that would be pure misery. Yeah. And there's over 1,000 of them, and people get into more of them than you think. And so, yeah. But I always laugh too when you have like a guy playing by himself, not against anybody, not for money, not even really keeping score. And he'll ask, is this a waste bunker? Dude, it's whatever you want it to be. Pick it up and carry it for, all you care. But, yeah. Right. So, yeah,
that's how you play, Mark.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it was competitive or whatever, but like I said, sometimes it'll be like a guy who's other times is moving the ball or just saying, I'm not going to hit that or whatever. And then he'll be like, is this a waste bunker? And I think that stems from that tournament. Like it's in their head about something about waste bunkers and Whistling Straits. So, that's always fun to be able to replay with people. I will say that's something that when I started caddying, I wasn't familiar with that shot. Like I pay attention to the major tournaments in golf a whole lot more now than I did before I started caddying. So it wasn't like on day one of caddying at Whistling Straits, I knew what DJ's waist bunker was, and you'd get asked it, and you're like, over there. You had no idea. Like, I better look up what this is. And that was fun to do. So, Nick, do you have a shot you can think of from this year that you would say from your players would be added to the list of iconic shots? Iconic, not just good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I saw a lot of awesome shots this year, obviously, but I had a guy that hit it too far on 18, and we found the ball, and I was like, all right, yeah, let's just drop like back here or whatever. He's like, nah, I'm going to play this one. I'm like, seriously? And it went way better than I thought it was going to. He hit it on the green and ended up making birdie, and I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For me, it's got to be like when you think about things that people don't expect to do or they don't expect to see, it's the hole-in-one with the right pin on hole 12. Like that's just that's a pin position that players who are familiar with the cars talk about. It's a hole that people talk about. One that I want to find out if it really happened or not is, did Brett Favre really drive the green on hole 13, a par 4? 13. I've heard I've heard he did, and I've heard he didn't.
I mean,
what do you think?
I believe it. I mean, I think he probably did. I mean, I've seen numerous people that aren't professional athletes drive that green, so I could see that happening. I mean, there was a hole-in-one in the fog on that hole one time, I guess. So
yeah, I love when people. I love when you have players from New York, and the other caddy that I work with a lot will be like, greatest New York Jet ever, Brett Favre once drove this green, and you just get the Jets fans all riled up. So yeah. All right. So lots of wonderful, iconic holes. We hope people will come out and visit us. It's a beautiful, special place to go. I know not everybody can afford it, or it's something you need to save up for a while. If you're into taking golf trips and, saving up for special places, I think that Whistling Straits is one you need to add to your bucket list, and hopefully someday you can get out there and be watching my Twitter feed, because around Thanksgiving I'm going to run one final book promo for Caddie Tales. Then next year I've got 6 people who've won free rounds out at Whistling Straits from me. This year
Mark's
had 3.
Poor next year.
Yeah, well, yeah, three people have cashed in this year. We've got 6 on tap, and hopefully we'll add a few more as people buy some Christmas gifts and such, so that maybe they can put a book underneath the tree, but also a gift card for a round for 2 at the Straits next year, because it's a special place. That's why I do it. I wish I had better like sales funnels and stuff like that, where I didn't need to put Twitter posts up about it and stuff. But like that's something, when I become a better businessman and technical person, I'll have a better system. But for now, I throw it up there, and I have an earnest desire to just get people out there. And I know not everybody can afford it. I know that. And I want to make it as possible for people as I can. Hey, Nick, before we end today, we have our segment at the end of the show, Heavy Baggage. And, we're trying to be intentional this winter about looking for people who are carrying heavy bags, not just on golf courses, but in life. And this week we were reminded very personally and all too close to home that people really are carrying those heavy bags, and we need to be on the lookout to help lighten their load. We tragically lost one of our caddy friends this past week, and while all the details are not there, we do know, and his sisters have even posted this on social media, so I don't think it's out of line to say, he struggled with addiction. Addiction played a part in his passing, and we knew this was part of his life. We also knew that he was a genuinely nice guy. I actually occasionally get frustrated, and I don't say this when it's happening, the way we deify people after they died. Not everybody who lived was the nicest person who always had a smile on their face and would always give you the shirt off their back and all that. No, that's not how people are. We're all more complicated than that. And what we should say is we love people in spite of their warts and scars. And I think of our friend Noah like that. He was a genuinely nice person. Like, I'm not just saying that to be nice. He was somebody, whereas most people, most caddies kind of who've learned about my past struggles either just ignore it or occasionally like gossip behind your back. This is someone who tried to have one-on-one conversations with me. And we shared, our struggles of the past, and he was open about his and transparent about it. And it was a kind of a gentle little giant, and, had a lot of gifts and talents, and yet battled this demon in his life. And unfortunately, as we know, happens all too often, he succumbed to it. And so what I will say is that we, for one, want to recognize the heavy bags that people carry. We want to say that we will be on the lookout for ways that we can support those who are mourning his loss. I actually believe that I'm going to go with another caddy friend to meet with his parents and talk with them and just let them know that their son was special to a lot of people, and he touched lives, and he was somebody that, while there was difficulty, they can also remember the good things about him. And also, I think this should make us more intentional to be on the lookout for people who are struggling, and be bold enough to go up to them and say, hey, how can I support you, or let me support you? Thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, no, he was an amazing person. I played golf with him this summer, and I swear he didn't miss a fairway all day. He was just such an incredible golfer, and probably a better person. And he was the first person that actually, on one of our coffee days, he's like, gosh, I love your podcast. I love what you guys are doing and stuff. And I was like, I just couldn't believe it. He was that was the first time I heard that.
Let me stop you there, Nick, and say, awesome. Because, we do, whereas most of the caddies we're cool. There are occasionally gruff guys who are passive aggressive, whether they're jealous or they just don't like this kind of stuff or whatever. They'll look for ways to cut you down. And that part of that's just how dudes interact with each other too. And he was one of those guys who looked for ways to build us up. And so, I agree. He did that. I remember that when we went for coffee with him this winter, him talking like that. And that goes along with him asking me, about past struggles that I've had. He was a genuine person in that way, where he'd try to one-on-one build you up. Yeah. And what's funny is by the end, his health had gotten bad in some ways. He had some physical limitations this last season, and he had put on a lot of weight. Like, I saw some pictures of him this morning, because I had heard he was a really good tennis player and a killer pickleball player. And I was having a harder time envisioning that, to be honest. And you're like, you forget everybody has a past, and that past is filled with the good and the bad. And he had a lot of good in him. And so we grieve because, unfortunately, we've lost a number of caddy friends over the years through similar situations or other tragic situations, or just sometimes health. And it always hurts to lose someone that you work alongside, but especially it hurts when you're left to wonder what more you could have done and how you could have reached out. So, hey, those of you who are listening, if you're struggling, we pray that you'll find the help that you need. And if you're somebody that wants to reach out to me and talk, please do shoot me a message on Twitter, and we'll set up a time. I'd want nothing more than that. And even if it's just to listen to you, as somebody who knows what it's like to go into the depths, to go into the deep bunkers, to be out of bounds, because I want to tell you what I wish I could tell Noah one more time, and which I wish I could tell everybody who's hurting, is that no matter how far, no matter how deep, no matter how dark, the misses, the shanks, the divots, all of that, as long as we're on this side of the ground, there's always a next shot full of hope and opportunity. So take yours.